and welcome back to A Method to the Madness, the podcast where we discuss and analyze our favourite movies and TV shows. I'm your host Patrick, and joining me is Mitchie.
Hello.
And today we are talking about the 2021 film Dune, directed by Denis Villeneuve, based off the novel by Frank Herbert, starring Timothy Chalamet, Zendaya, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, Rebecca Ferguson, and Stellan Skarsgård. There's a lot of other people, but I'll just leave them out.
Yeah, like Josh Brolin.
Yeah, Josh Brolin and Javier Bardem. There's a lot of fucking people in this movie. Jesus.
Javier Bardem, yeah, true.
Yeah.
And then that token actor that Villeneuve seems to always have in his movies.
David Dastmalchier, I think is how you say it. Yeah, he's in all of Villeneuve's films. Yeah, he's great.
He plays some creepy dude.
Yeah. Well, in 2049, he plays some like pretty unassuming character. He's just like the bone analyst or something.
He's still weird.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. All right. Let's go into first impressions. Michi, what did you think about this movie?
When I watched it the first time, I actually wasn't that impressed. I was kind of underwhelmed by it. I watched it in the cinemas like a week after it came out, and I don't know what it was about it. It was a little slow for me and a little kind of confusing maybe, and maybe I just didn't quite appreciate exactly what the world of Dune was about. And you know, we watched it a second time together when you visited me, Pat, and you kind of gave me a bit more of a backstory as to what this world is about, you know. And the second time was so much better because I had a lot more context about things. And like, for example, like the villains in this, the Harkonnens, is that Harkonnens, yeah, they kind of you know, you told me how like brutal this world is in the books, and that idea was conveyed to me a lot more the second time I'm viewing it. But the first time I was watching it, I just kind of wasn't sure what I was meant to expect from, say, them. Yeah, and it just in general was just a little kind of slow in my opinion. A lot of kind of like scenes of dialogue and talking in this. And when you don't have that context there, it almost seems a little purposeless. But of course, you know, it does have purpose though, because I just don't know about it. But anyway, I think it's a great film now, and a bunch of reasons why. Like it looks awesome, and the score is like just like holy shit, like amazing,
some spicy music.
Yeah, like this score is so unique and special. Like it's one of Hans Zimmer's best, even though it's not my favorite of his. I can appreciate it as one of his best, and you know, his second Oscar actually since Lion King, so you know, which I feel like he deserved one before this, but anyway. And also the story, and it's just really great. The world building in this is awesome, and now I'm just really keen to get into kind of talking about it, and also for the sequels. Just really want them to come out now, so I'm keen. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, so I forget, this movie got announced a while back, I think. Ever since I first heard that this film was in development and that it was being directed by Denis Villeneuve, I was so hyped for it. I was so excited, so hyped that I read the book in preparation. Which
wow, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was because of Villeneuve that I read the book. To tell you how much I love Villeneuve. But yeah, I liked the book, I read it, and as I was reading it, I kept thinking, man, this scene is going to be so good in the movie, I can't wait to see this bit in the movie. Really, my whole experience revolved around the movie, not the book. Anyway, and then I saw the movie, and even though I hyped myself up for it, it even surpassed my expectations. Yep. I was so impressed and so happy with this film. The biggest thing I take away is Villeneuve's commitment to making something new and unique. Yeah. He did that in 2049. He did that in this film, and I think it's so commendable. Especially in, you know, the sort of age we live in now of sequels and prequels and in-universe stuff. The fact that this guy is so committed to bringing new experiences into, you know, filmmaking and art is something I just commend him to the moon and back for. And yeah, this is something I learned after, or something I realized sort of after the first few times I watched it. But it's only because I read the book that I didn't realize how little this film explains about what's going on. You know, speaking to your first experience.
Yeah.
And then as I sort of heard more impressions about it, I was like, oh yeah, I guess it really doesn't, does it? It's like kind of reminds me of like the first time I watched Game of Thrones. Everyone says this is Game of Thrones in space, right? Which it kind of is.
100% is. That's literally the most accurate statement for this movie.
Right. Similarly, that in the first season of Game of Thrones, it doesn't really explain much at all. It just kind of drops you in the middle of this political conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But TV's kind of different though, because you can kind of spend time building that and showing how, like, say, brutal the families are. But in this, you don't have much time to do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's something I want to talk about later is whether this would have been better adapted as a TV show, maybe. But yeah, all right. For now, let's go into a plot summary. Could you read that out, please, Michi?
Sure. In the far future, conflict arises within the great houses of the Landsrad. Paul of House Atreides is being mentored in how to be a ruler by his father, Duke Leto, as well as being trained in the ways of the Bene Gesserit by his mother, Jessica. The Emperor decrees that the Atreides are to move to the planet Arrakis, home of the most valuable substance in the universe, spice. We learn that this is a conspiracy concocted by the Emperor and the previous rulers of Arrakis, House Harkonnen, to eliminate the Atreides line. Meanwhile, Paul is tested by the Bene Gesserit to determine if he is the Kwisatz Haderach, a prophesied messianic superbeing who will guide humanity to a better future. House Atreides tries its best to survive on Dune and form a pact with the native population, but are betrayed by one of their own, Dr. Yu. The Harkonnens attack, destroy their fleet, and kill the Duke Leto. Paul and Jessica escape into the desert and encounter the Fremen, a group of people who live out in the desert. By proving their worth through combat, Paul and Jessica are accepted into their tribe. Paul vows to supplant the Emperor and make Arrakis into a paradise. Yeah, the names in this are really interesting, like I was just saying, but it's probably going to get cut out. There's like a lot of foreign names in this, foreign sounding names, at least from a Western perspective on our planet. But then everyone just kind of sounds like Westerners. And obviously that's probably for the convenience sake of the movie and whatnot, but it's just interesting. But then you got the two main characters and they're just called Paul and Jessica.
Yeah, it is.
The most generic names.
It is funny, eh?
Yeah, it's not like Game of Thrones, where everyone's kind of got this like strangely old-fashioned medieval sounding name. This is like Paul and Jessica. And I think that's a really interesting aspect of this, because you told me that these guys humans of our future, potentially, like they came from our world to some degree, and they adopt this kind of new way of living because of like computers being banned or some shit like that. And so it kind of makes sense then that their names are Paul and Jessica.
yeah it is meant to be just like a far future, like kind of mystical sci-fi. And it's not mentioned anywhere in the first book, from what I can remember. But there's an animated TED-Ed video which sort of explains the lore of Dune, which is that.
Oh yeah, you sent me that.
Yeah. So humanity created like a bunch of robots, thousands of years in the future, and then they took over and they enslaved humanity. But then humanity, sort of took over again and they got their freedom back. And then from there was like this universal decree that was like, thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a human mind.
Right.
And so because of the ban on robots and AI, humans themselves had to evolve into supercomputers and whatever else, and they do that through ingesting spice, this magical substance that they get from
Fucking hell, it's like truly magical. Jesus.
Yeah. And it tastes like cinnamon, apparently.
Really?
Which is such a funny detail.
It's a psychedelic too, but then it also powers ships. Does everything, this stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I love how it's a psychedelic too. Like, it just makes Paul trip the fuck out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, fuck. There's a lot to that. I mean, in the book as well, Paul is a mentat as well as having Bene Gesserit training. Mm-hmm. So the vision that Paul has when he's in the tent of like the Great War coming, I don't know. In the movie, it's a bit weird why he has that, but in the book, it's a bit more clear. It's a mix of his Bene Gesserit training and his mentat training, because mentats are like supercomputers, right? They can see probability they can see like kind of possible future outcomes. And
that's the Duke's right hand man, right?
Yeah, the guy who like has secondary eyelids and shit.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of all of Paul's training combined with the psychedelic effects of the spice that make Paul see this future, and throughout the book he has these visions of these what do you call them, prophetic visions of what will happen.
Yeah, like premonitions.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, it
is a very interesting world.
Yeah, it is. You know, I think I said to you back when the movie released that I wasn't gonna read the other Dune books, but since I've been learning more about them, they seem actually really interesting, and I think I will.
Yeah.
As it happens, for some reason, a lot of people have been uploading Dune stuff recently. Alt Shift X released like a massive video about Dune. For some reason, the Take has released a bunch of videos about Dune in the last couple of days. So this movie is still like very much in the zeitgeist. Anyway, okay, let's get into some stuff. So, okay, first of all, Villeneuve, right? Incredible filmmaker. Villeneuve has said that in Dune as well as in 2049, he starts out with concept art, which is very interesting to me. So I've actually got a book here, which is about the concept art for 2049, and there's a foreword by Denis Villeneuve. So I'm just going to read this out real quick. So, at first, movies are born as volatile and fragile dreams. To slowly bring them to the surface of reality, the intimate process of storyboarding can be necessary. Through the years, storyboarding has become an extension of screenwriting to me, a voyage into the language of images. My vision solidifies with those early drawings, and I adjust the screenplay to them afterward. I use storyboards as a guideline to figuring out how to shoot a movie. However, I never want them to be considered as a dogma on set. On my projects, storyboards overrule the screenplay, but nature supersedes storyboards. Still, they should be perceived as an expression of dreams without any concessions.
Interesting. Does he draw them himself?
No, he works with
artists.
Artists. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, I think it's funny how, he says that that statement sort of parallels the nature of Dune's atmosphere as well, because it opens with the Sardaukar language saying that dreams are messages from the deep.
Yep.
And that's something Nolan is a big fan of, comparing filmmaking to dreams. So there's something there. But just the fact that Villeneuve places such importance on images, I think says a lot about his approach to filmmaking, right? Because every film has concept art and storyboards, but the fact that he changes his screenplay to the tune of the concept art is, to me, that is what makes Villeneuve such a great filmmaker.
So what would be the traditional way of doing it?
You write a script.
Writing. Yep.
Yeah, and then you sort of enter pre-production, where you give that script to artists and say, draw what is on the page, and so we can give this to our production designers so they can make this, and I forget the role of people who look for locations, but give it to them, and so they can sort of accurately find what is conveyed on the page, whereas Villeneuve's is very fluid. He writes a screenplay, then he's like, he wonders how will this look on film, and then he gets influenced by some art, and then he changes his script accordingly.
Which so it's more the ordering, which is very important, of course. Like the script's determined by art, not art determined by script.
I think it's a bit of both. They both influence each other, which is not how it usually goes with when making films, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, the visual elements, probably Villeneuve's a step above the rest in that department. But that is one half of the experience. The other half is audio, right? And of course, for this movie, we get the legendary Hans Zimmer on the instruments,
which he abandoned Tenet for. I didn't actually know that.
Did he?
Yeah, that's why Tenet didn't have Hans Zimmer. Apparently, Nolan asked him for it to get on it, and he declined because he really wanted to do Dune, because it was always his dream to do Dune, as well as Dennis's dream to direct Dune. So there's just you can just tell there's just so much passion in this movie. You know, everyone just wants to get involved in it because it just seemed like it's just this epic book that everyone wanted to do something on. So yeah, it's cool.
There's a Vanity Fair video where Hans Zimmer breaks down his approach to how he created the music for Dune, and in it he talks about how he's a fan of the Dune books, which is awesome. Yeah, I mean, as you say, there's passion from everyone involved in this film.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you are interested in a full breakdown, go watch that video. It's very good. But I'll just sort of, you know, say some points. In the video, he talks about how all sci-fi before the 2000s seemed to have this very European orchestral sounds and tonalities to them.
Yeah.
And he wanted to create something new and alien for this film, to the point where he worked with this dude who invented his own instruments and they kind of look like random metal objects fused together, but they make very unique sounds. And they also got like a linguist to invent the language of the Sardaukar, which is like the very throaty, deep, you know, like almost throat singing kind of sound. And he made it so that, well, first of all, they would say a syllable of that language, you know, it's like, but it's, I imagine it's very hard to sort of use that sound as if you were speaking a language. So what he did is he got a compressor, he recorded each syllable, and then he just made them like really close together. And all that combined, it just results in this really like violent sounding language. And I gotta say, it's one of the coolest sounding languages I think has ever been made for like a fictional world.
Oh yeah. It's just Hans Zimmer, man, like, oh god, that man's just like a genius, and honestly, hands down the best film composer there is at the moment. You know, there's no argument for that, like against that. Like he just is. Like no one can give me someone that's better than him. He just does so much like he's so willing to be diverse and experimental and wants to try new things. And yeah, like you say, like a lot of films are based on European orchestral kind of music, and it's true, and that's kind of basically what most Hollywood films do, right? It's just very kind of like, oh yeah, we'll just use a conventional orchestra, but this man just, you know, he uses a conventional orchestra, but then he combines it with all this other stuff, and I don't know, he just always nails it. And in Dune, man, like definitely one of his best scores. It's just crazy how good it is. Like that drum, kind of like, you know, when you just get that shot of the planet, and then there's this like weird, like real, like I don't know, like it's drums, right? You know what I'm talking about? It's like this, like it's at the start of the song, and it's like these drums going. It's like this percussion bit, and it just sounds so like fitting for that planet. But it doesn't sound like any drums I've ever heard of before. Like I don't really know how he got that sound, but you can just tell that he's just put so much time into it, and 100% deserves the Oscar. Like yeah, just crazy. I would almost argue that, like, I think the audio component of this film kind of outweighs the visual. Like, it's like I think if there is one movie that you should see in cinema above every other movie, it's this one, because just like the audioscape is just like such crazy. An experience. Yeah, it's so fucking crazy. And the same goes for Blade Runner too, like 2049, and also to some degree Arrival. Like, Arrival doesn't have any actually very interesting visuals in it, but the music in it is actually really interesting, and also suits like this kind of weird arrival of aliens, you know, like his movies have some really good sound in it. Like the audio is actually what stands out the most to me. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, so and speaking of seeing this film in a cinema, I think something that's really important in this film's atmosphere is scale. Man, no one does scale like Villeneuve. There's this one shot from Blade Runner 2049 that just lives rent-free in my head, which is the shot of the Tyrell Corp pyramid from the first Blade Runner film. And it's already a colossal building, right? Like fucking huge. And then all of it's within frame. And then you see these blinking red lights behind it.
and you're like, what is that? And then you realize that what you thought was the night sky behind it is actually the Wallace building that absolutely just dwarfs the hell out of the Tyrell building.
Yeah.
And it's so big you can't even get all of it in shot. And there's a lot of shit like that in this film as well.
Yeah, like the slip space thing in above the planet. And you see through it, and it's like another planet, but it's obviously like a wormhole or something.
Yeah,
and then the ships come out through it, and that thing looks like giant as, and in the context of the planet, it looks very big. Like it's a really good shot.
Yeah, and everything to do with the Harkonnens, like their home planet Gady Prime is full of this colossal technology and architecture, and like the ships they have are like the size of like the whole city of Arrakeen, like where on where the Atreides set up. You know, in the beginning where
that ship that lands.
Yeah, when Zendaya's narrating.
Yeah.
Oh,
the ship that's like farming for spice.
Well, they're attacking the ship that the thing that's farming for spice, and then there's a ship above them that shoots like these missiles.
Yeah,
and it's just like it's so big that it can't even get it all in shot. But yeah, it just gives this like really like oppressive atmosphere as well.
Yeah, it's scary. Anything like that is scary when you just see how big something is. Yeah.
I think there's a term for that. It's like megalophobia or something. It's just the fear of like really fucking colossally huge stuff.
I think humans are kind of ingrained with a little bit of that phobia. Every single human. Like the ocean, for example. Just that shit's always scary.
Yeah. And man, I think no other filmmaker can convey something like that so awesomely. Yeah. Oh yeah, and by the way, that I think this isn't indicated anywhere in the movie, but that wormhole thing you were talking about, that's I was telling you about a bit about how that works in the books. So there's this, I forget what the company is. There's the Chome Company, which is like the company who has a monopoly on trade within all the universe. And then there's another company that controls space travel. And the way they do that is they have these guild navigators who consume so much spice that they mutate into these fucking weird, gross creatures. But the trade-off is that they can bend space, and that's and they have a monopoly on space travel and shit.
Right.
There's some really weird lore.
I find it interesting that you say universe, because that's actually what they say in the movie. Emperor of like the universe or something like that. I don't know. At some point they give a line and they spit out the Emperor's like full title.
Emperor Shaddam the Fourth. I think.
Yeah, of the universe. Like it specifically states universe, and it's like you don't see that often in sci-fi. Like Star Wars, for example, you know, in a galaxy far, far away. It's a galaxy, right? And everything seems a lot more manageable within a galaxy because, you know, galaxies are kind of this bundle of stars that are stuck together. But when you're talking about the universe, you're just expanding that scale by, you know, orders of magnitude that's just incomprehensible to a human being. Like you're expanding to all the galaxies in the universe, right? And they're miles apart. And in terms of like real science, it's physically impossible to travel between most galaxies because of the expansion of the universe. You know, like it's just crazily large. And when just someone says something like that, and you know, I'm assuming it means it seriously. Like, I don't know if they're just saying that because the Emperor is narcissistic and wants to think that he's, you know, in charge of the universe, or truly the Dune universe actually has expanded to other galaxies and more or less kind of has, you know, fed the entire universe. It's just a scary thought to me. Like, you just don't see that often. Like, that's some serious shit when people say universe.
No, yeah, exactly. Like, it is, because, you know, if you imagine you're like a citizen of Arrakis, where, you know, there's not much technology, and you don't dare rise up against the Emperor because
of the universe.
Man, like, of the universe. Like, what hope do you have, mate? Like,
literally has control of all of reality. Like,
exactly, yeah. So, you know, I just and when I think of like the Emperor of the universe, I imagine that the Sarduka score just going, oh, like the throat chanting, like, you know, some really oppressive shit.
I wonder what he looks like. He must have a planet, right?
Funny you say that. So they recently cast Emperor Shaddam the Fourth and he's going to be played by Christopher Walken.
What?
Yeah, legit, in Dune Part 2.
It's just funny how it's just some old white dude.
Yeah, and I was talking with David about this a couple of days ago. When I read the book, for some reason, I imagined him as quite a young man. I'm not too sure because
Walken's old now. Fucking hell.
The Dune books. The thing about the Dune books is that they don't give much description of the characters, which is kind of odd.
Yep.
And so yeah, that's a thing. A lot of people. One of the main criticisms of like Dune as a story is that people go, "Oh, it's a white savior story." Which, if you first of all,
I've heard that actually. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I don't like. There's not much evidence in the books that the Atreides are white people and the people of Arrakis are like black and brown people. I think that's a artistic choice made by Villeneuve, which is not even that consistent because there's like people of all colors in both Arrakis and the Atreides.
Yeah.
Except for like Gady Prime, which is all like very pale people.
Yeah.
But and also as the books go on, to my understanding, sorry, I'm not going to try and spoil it too much, but the Dune books are a sort of like a subversion of the Messiah myth, and it gets increasingly disturbing and morally grey as the books go on. So yeah, anyway, all right, I'll go into some differences between the book and the movie just because, why not? So the reading of the decree scene wasn't in the book, where the Emperor's envoy comes and he has that scroll, which I thought I love this edition. Actually, it's a great way to visually establish some of the world and then give some exposition. It's like an important scene in the world. Yeah, I don't know. I the reason I'm going through these is because I'm just want to highlight how I really love all the decisions made in the film in regards to changing events from the book. The battle scene of Arrakis getting invaded wasn't in the book as well. It's all from like Paul and Jessica and Leto's perspective, and it kind of happens out of sight.
Right. Okay.
About how Arrakeen gets invaded. But man, that's an awesome scene. There's some cool visual effects, like the bombs that come down and sort of like phase through the shield. Yeah. And it blows up that ship they have, and then the explosion sort of fills up the inside of the shield before it breaks out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
And when the ships are coming down, like they have like these automated turrets that sort of like shoot, and just something about the sound design paired with like the rigidity of the guns. It's just like, again, more of that scale stuff. It's like so intense. That scene in the movie just holy shit, that got me so fucking hyped. The fight scene between Jameis and Paul is different. That guy toward the end of the movie, who duels with Paul. In the books, Paul has a lot of opportunities to kill Jameis, but he doesn't because he's conditioned to fight as if he's fighting someone who's wearing a shield, and which is established in the movie as well. How if you're fighting someone with a shield, you need to slowly get the blade near them so it goes past their shield. Yeah. And because of that. And Paul has a lot of chances to kill Jameis, but he doesn't, and Stilgar thinks he is toying with him. But Paul is just like sort of like not killing him as a reflex in the books, but in the film it's because Paul is hesitant to take his life. Yeah. Which again I really like. There's a lot of more humanizing changes made to the movie than in the book. For example, like there's the breakfast scene at the beginning with Paul and Jessica, like they're just having breakfast, which is like, I don't know, it's a small thing, but it humanizes them a lot more. Just makes them feel like a normal family. And there's the talk he has with his father on that little island where,
at the start.
It establishes Duke Leto as this really honorable and kind-hearted man. He's like, even if you don't want to take up my mantle, you'll always be my son. That's all I ever need you to be. Really sweet stuff. In the books, Leto is still an honorable guy. He's not that fucking like, emotionally intelligent, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the books, there's this dinner scene where they get all like these like rich and important people all from all around Arrakis, and they sort of discuss politics. So the thing about Frank Herbert, the author of Dune, if I'm not mistaken, he is an ecologist, and he spent a lot of time working out the intricacies of the planet of Arrakis. Similarly, and that is why the majority of books take. Well, I actually haven't read the books, but I've read the first book. But that's why the majority of the book takes place on Arrakis and is focused on, the environment and the animals that live there and stuff like that. Okay. Similarly, it's like how the Lord of the Rings is very focused on like language as well. It's because who's the author of Lord of the Rings again?
Tolkien.
Yeah. Tolkien was a linguist, right? Like, yeah. So similarly, authors just sort of make the focus of their fictional worlds about subjects they know a lot about. Yeah. Which I thought is very interesting. Yeah. And then that scene of the dinner is all the important people have like monopolies and controlling interests in different parts of what the planet Arrakis offers. And all that comes down to, how the planet functions like ecologically. And it's all very interesting. Yeah. That's about it. That's about all I had for the book/movie differences. All right. Now let's talk about whether this would have been better as a TV show. One of the popular criticism of this movie is that it doesn't suit a movie form, right? It should be a TV series, is what people say. To which I say, well, first of all, it wouldn't be directed by Villeneuve, so that's an instant loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, it's also like, it seems a little biased because people just think it's Game of Thrones in space, so that's why they think it should be a TV show. Yeah,
you're probably right, honestly. That is probably the main source of, like, justification.
Where the idea comes from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do get the reasonings, like, as you said, like, it's just Game of Thrones in space, right? But, like, political intrigue stories need time to develop. I get that. But then again, like, I say, like, did you see the movie? Like, that kind of spectacle cannot be done in a TV series, right? Whether it's because of talent or budget, I feel like even in our golden age of television, you cannot approach the magnificence of this film in a TV show format. Yeah,
I don't know what it is. Yeah, you're right. But why don't TV shows ever have such, like, I don't know, epicness to it? Like, they can't nail that. Is it because of budget? But TV shows get a lot of money. Like, have you seen how much they're pumping into this new Lord of the Rings TV series? They're putting like $1 billion in or some shit. Like, ridiculous amounts.
Yeah.
Although I imagine that should be an epic TV series because it's meant to be based on Lord of the Rings. So I'd be bloody disappointed if it wasn't. And then maybe, like, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. Like, you just can't nail, like, expansive sci-fi landscapes in TV shows. Like, that kind of idea doesn't fit with me. It's always in a movie.
So to give you an idea, the budget for Dune was $165 million, right? And you get to funnel that into 2.5 hours of, like, you get to concentrate that in 2.5 hours. Whereas, like, for example, the final season of Game of Thrones, despite how visually, epic that was, just visually, it had like $10 million per episode, right? Which is a lot in regards to TV, but compared to film,
an hour. Like $10 million an hour versus like $80 million an hour for Dune. Yeah, fair
exactly. Enough. There's just like the amount of detail you can have in every moment is orders of magnitude beyond what you can accomplish in TV. So. Yeah, I mean, not to say that a Dune TV show wouldn't be awesome, but I wouldn't trade anything for this Villeneuve adaptation.
Yeah, you're right. I think the visual aspect and the audio aspect, it has to be in a film media format for this to work like it does. But it's more the plot, I think, is what kind of people wishing would be changed with the if it was a TV series, and it's understandable. But like, I don't know, like, like I said, the first time I watched it, I was a little confused, and I imagine a lot of other viewers first time watching it had the same issue too. But it's kind of one of those things, like, You can go out of your way and read a little bit about it beforehand, or you watch it a second time after you've gained some context after watching it the first time, and it's better, right? It doesn't necessarily make it bad. It just means that it needs multiple viewings, and that's never a problem with a movie. Yeah, you know, but Game of Thrones just relies so much on the TV format to convey the plot, and that's what makes it so good. And in terms of visuals, Game of Thrones is not that great. Like, you know, it's more the story and the characters development and stuff, and that's the kind of shit you can nail in a TV series, and that's what Game of Thrones does really well.
Yeah, I recently finished the first Game of Thrones book, and then I watched the first season of Game of Thrones, and man, that first season it's kind of like a stage play. Like, it really, the majority of it is. Yeah. I mean, you know, first of all, that first season is probably the best season of Game of Thrones, because it just follows the book pretty much like exactly. But yeah, it's just really, really good acting and drama.
Yeah, a lot of it's just dialogue, eh?
Yeah,
just people talking
legit.
and shit, and then a few odd, like, really barbaric kills here and there to, you know, keep everyone happy.
Yeah, and lots and lots of nudity.
Yeah, nudity and sex. Yeah, that's also a big thing.
Yeah, back in the 2011 era, which is when, like, that was like one of the hallmarks of primetime TV. But yeah, Dune TV show possibly sometime in the future. But I mean, Villeneuve is going to make this is going to be a trilogy, from what I understand. He's going to make Dune Part 2, which is going to be the second half of the first Dune book. And then the third movie, I think, is going to be either some of the second book or all of it.
Right.
Which...
Well, there you go. Now I've got context. Now I'm fucking keen for these two next movies, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to work.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, to your point about, like, how it... You know, a TV show format is necessary for explaining stuff. We're going to get a lot more Dune. And, you know, that's it. I imagine it's going to explain a lot more shit anyway. Like, you know, having read the first book, like, the second half of the story does go a lot into, like, the political landscape of this universe.
Yeah.
And some shit happens. I'm not going to say, but get keen.
Yeah, I would, like, if anyone's going to watch this movie, I'd seriously recommend spoiling yourself a bit and actually kind of reading a little bit about Dune. It's not the kind of thing that you want to go in blind, and that was a problem I had. And if anyone's going to ask me about it, I'm going to say to them, like, yeah, I can tell you a little bit about the backstory of the world, because that's going to actually make the viewing experience a lot better for you, because I think that's what it kind of needs, which, you know, is a little bit, could be perceived by some as not a good thing. But there's a whole variety of films out there. Some are good going in blind and some aren't, you know. That's just the reality of movies. They're just all different.
Yeah. I'm going to recommend a video if you do want to sort of get some context before or after you see the film. YouTube channel called Quinn's Ideas. There's a video called The Politics of Dune Explained in 5 minutes. Very succinct video about the political landscape of Dune. If you're looking to just get some good analysis and comparisons between the book and the movie, watch Old Chip X's video on Dune. You know, there's always no shortage of video essays.
Definitely
if you're into that kind of stuff. Yeah, and definitely watch the fucking video with a Vanity Fair with Hans Zimmer. I just can't get enough of this dude. I'm looking at his face right now. It's just this is the face of a genius right here.
100%. I don't know how it took him so long to get another Oscar. He got nominated so many times since Lion King, but definitely deserves this one.
Out of everything, The Lion King is what he gets an Oscar for.
Yeah, that was a banging soundtrack.
Was it? I didn't see it.
I haven't seen it either, but surely you've heard some of the music. It's like the best of musicals.
Didn't they just take it from the animated movie?
No, that's what I'm talking about. He did the soundtrack for the animated Lion King.
Oh, like back way in 92. Back in the day.
Yeah, he did that.
Okay.
Yeah, he like the music of the Lion King. Now everyone knows, like, Hakuna Matata is actually from Hans Zimmer.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah,
I suppose he is kind of an old man. He's probably been working for a number of years.
Yeah, this is the thing. He just fucking does everything. Like, dude, that's a kid's musical, and
and then he goes on to
do Dune,
do the score of Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Just true passion, that guy.
Yeah, honestly, that's about all I have to say for Dune.
I got one thing I want to talk about, actually.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the reasons why I didn't like Dune. And I just want to talk about the violence, the use of violence in Villeneuve's films. Violence is a very weird thing. Like, people don't really think about it in film very often, but it has so much power, you know, and a lot of the time violence is just there because it goes hand in hand with action, and people like watching action in movies. And that's fair enough. That's understandable. But violence also can be used to just convey so many things about your characters, particularly, you know, the people that are bad, because they're the ones that are going to be violent. And therefore it's good to, you know, or about the world and how shitty the world is. And, you know, it's like Game of Thrones, for example, you know, because we're already talking about it, it's a very violent TV series. And that really adds to it, and really adds to the kind of how barbaric their world is, you know? Although sometimes I feel like in Game of Thrones, it's also there just for a shock factor value, which I generally don't appreciate very much in terms of the context of making something of quality. Because don't get me wrong, I love watching violence in movies, like, you know, and anything that's, especially like extreme shit. Like you and me, you and I, we've watched some pretty fucked up shit, and
fucked up stuff.
yeah, and it's enjoyable, you know. But one thing I like about violence in Villeneuve's films is that it's just got this really good balance of, it's a good level of violence, and I'm talking in particular of Blade Runner 2049, Prisoners, and Sicario. Those three films are rated MA 15 plus in Australian ratings, which is, you know, pretty violent generally, but it's not like over the top violence. And the level of violence is just perfect in those films because it really conveys like exactly the subject matter that it's going for. For example, in Blade Runner 2049, the violence that stands out to me in that is like the killing of Love at the end of that film is quite barbaric and very focused on her dying, you know, being choked to death. And that in context with the idea of, you know, do androids have lives or not? Are they living beings? Really ties in well. And I think that use of violence is perfect. If it had been a little tamer and wasn't so graphic and didn't show her like seriously choking to death and you see her dying, you know, it just wouldn't work as well. And, you know, and the same goes for Sicario and Prisoners too. You know, if you've watched those films, you'd understand like Sicario is about like drug dealers in Mexico and stuff, and they're obviously very violent people, and it shows that pretty well and does a good job of kind of conveying that context. So it didn't really make much sense to me that Dune is actually not rated MA 15 plus. It's rated M, along with Arrival, which Arrival barely has any violence in it anyway. And I don't know, it's just like, considering what you've told me about the book, about how violent these people are, how fucked up this Dune universe is, how, you know, it's basically like Game of Thrones, where they'll kill a whole family if they have to, and that's what the Harkonnens do. They just like go in and don't even give any quarter to the Atreides. They just want to kill the entire family, and that's what old mate, you know, orders him to do, right? And it feels really barbaric. And you also told me that in the books that the level of violence is like bad, like they commit genocide against each other, you know, because of their wars and stuff. And when I hear these things, it would have made a lot more sense to me if Dune was actually a little bit more violent. And I'm not saying it needs to be like Game of Thrones, but I'm saying it needed to be more like Blade Runner, where death had a little bit more kind of meaning, you know. But in this, I don't know, it just doesn't feel that violent to me. Like, the only violent scene was when old mate, you know, closes a door and then he decides to fight to the death. Yeah. And that was a good scene, you know. But it would have really added a bit more if it kind of had that, you know, Blade Runner level of violence. And I don't know why they decided to go for kind of a tamer go. Like, maybe it was you know, for the sake of advertising, they needed more people. They wanted to make money off it. Maybe the film was too expensive, you know. And obviously, if you make your film more violent, it's less accessible. And that's certainly could be why. But yeah, it's actually one of the reasons why I don't like Dune as much as his other films. You know, and it sounds a little silly, but to me, I think it's a really important thing, because if you just had made it quite violent, you know, it would have really conveyed how fucked up the Harkonnens are, and how brutal the world is.
From what I understand about the books, the next books in the series, it's not so much barbaric as it is like abominable, like very immoral.
Right.
There's not actually that much, like, you know, fucking guts and offal spilling out of people as it is, like, you know, like committing a really abominable acts of war and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, and I'm not asking for blood and guts. Like, you know, like Blade Runner doesn't have much blood and guts in it. In fact, it's got barely any. But you know, I like I've already said, that love scene when she dies just stands out to me so much as a key kind of use of violence to really convey what the movie's about. Like, it's a struggle watching that scene. It's actually very, very violent, you know. But choking someone to death is, in terms of cinema, not a very violent thing because there's no blood or anything. But for some reason, it just works so well. And, you know, I don't know, like, there is kind of a focus on how barbaric this world is. It kind of would have made more sense if they just focused a little bit more on when some key character dies, like Leto, for example. I don't know, it would have been a little bit more interesting if it was a tad more violent, but I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. We're not getting the violence, so I can't predict what it would have been like if it was with the violence, but it's just a point I've kind of noted, I suppose.
I think in the violence in Blade Runner 2049 is like, it's kind of like sophisticated. It's like a bit classy, I think.
Yeah?
Like
what bits?
Like the bit where he's choking Love, like under the water, like, you know, it's very upsetting. You know, watching her drown, but like
But she fucking, like, that actress is amazing in that. Like, she's great through the whole film, and she's got this, like, kind of real ruthless nature to her, and she's just fighting to the death, and she knows she's going to die, and she doesn't give up. And I don't know, that scene just kind of almost, it's scary in a way. Like, it just really kind of like, do androids have life, you know? And when you see that life leave her as she dies, it's almost confirming, like, yes, but through violence and not through a nice way.
But just from what it focuses on, which is her face, like, as she's dying, like, I feel like that is what sort of gives it a bit of sophistication. Is like, you know, some real artistic, you know, emotional stuff. Yeah. Rather than just like, I don't know, like watching her flailing about in the water from like a long shot or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But to do that, you need to increase the level of violence in it, because if, you know, that scene is easily an MA-15 plus scene, because choking someone could be in, you know, an M-rated movie. Just depending on how you shoot it, though, you can elevate it all the way up to R18 plus. You know, like in Game of Thrones, there's plenty of choking scenes, and yeah, they're fucking violent because the people grey out, and it just looks really realistic. And choking someone's interesting because you can actually kind of span a wide range of ratings in terms of, you know, movie ratings, and I think they nailed it with Blade Runner. And that's kind of what I'm more talking about. It's like that focus on death is what makes it violent, and it would have been just interesting to see Dune a little bit more violent, because the world they live in is fucked up. So I don't know.
That would be an interesting filmmaking experiment, trying to shoot a scene of someone choking someone to death in every age rating, like G, PG, and 15.
G, I don't know if you could do it in G. I think by default it would be PG. I don't know. Could you even have PG, someone choking someone to death? I feel like it's M.
That's the challenge, isn't it? It should be a prize pool for whoever can do it.
Like, Promising Young Woman's also got a good choking scene too. You know, he just puts a pillow on her, and you don't see her face at all, but she just like is flailing around. It's actually quite traumatic to watch, because you just see them dying, and that's what's kind of really, you know, violent about it.
She's looking like Pris at the end of Blade Runner when she gets shot.
Yeah, except Pris skitzes out. Yeah. She goes nuts.
Dude, that's one of the scariest shots.
That was a weird scene. Like, yeah. And I never understood why until I read the book, and then it kind of actually, there's a sentence in it that comments on that, something about their circuits stuffing up, and then they just jitter around everywhere or something like that. So that's where it actually did come from the book.
You're totally right. I forgot about that one.
Yeah. Anyway,
Anyway.
violence is interesting. Always an interesting topic.
Yeah. Yeah, man. All full violence here. Okay. We'll wrap it up there. You got any recommendations for this week?
Yeah, my recommendation isn't. Well, I guess it's sort of related. Because it's A, Timothy Chalamet's in it, and B, it's sort of like medieval fantasy kind of. It's called The King. It's on Netflix.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. It's Timothy Chalamet is one of kind of earlier protagonist roles, right? And it's got Robert Pattinson in as well, and he's great in that. And it's just a England versus France medieval film, pretty reasonably violent, kind of like gritty medieval stuff. And yeah, it's just a good watch. I'd recommend. It's on Netflix too, so it's easy to watch too. I think it's a Netflix exclusive, actually.
Yeah,
what do you have?
Nice. Well, okay, this is just... Don't berate me too hard, but look, I'm just going to recommend the book, all right?
Oh
now,
my god.
If you're
such a
kind of
slack recommendation.
I don't want to recommend something like really tangential, like...
Should I read the book? That's my question for you.
I don't know about you specifically, but if you're kind of on the fence about the book, I'd say give it a go. Like, it's a bit thick.
Yeah, that's how many pages? Like a heap.
It's a bit less than the first book in A Song of Ice and Fire. I'll say that.
Okay, that doesn't. Okay, I've read Lord of the Rings. That's pretty long.
Yeah, I'd say it's a bit less than Lord of the Rings, but I don't know. It's
still long.
If you it's very unique fantasy is I think the main selling point about it. So yeah, if you're already on the fence, I'd say just go for it. I'm personally gonna continue on the Dune books because they seem pretty interesting. But yeah, that's my recommendation.
Okay.
All right.
So should I read it?
Yes.
Will I like it?
Yeah, actually, I don't know. I don't.
Okay.
Think yeah.
It's not my kind of thing. Yeah. All right.
All right. Where can people find us?
People can find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, or Stitcher, or you can visit our website, amttm.com. And if you got any questions or queries, please email us on mail@amttm.com.
And what are we doing next time?
We're doing Spectre. We're continuing on our Daniel Craig pentology trek with David. And yeah, we did Skyfall last time, so obviously we're going to do Spectre next. So join us for that.
All right. Thank you all for listening, and join us next time.
See ya.